Back to 5, but I'll give it my best shot. An old married couple no sooner hit the pillows when the old man passes gas and says 7 points. His wife rolls over and says, "What in the world was that?" The old man replied, "It's marked football." A few minutes later, the wife lets one go and says, "Touchdown, tie score." After about 5 minutes, the old man lets another one go and says, "Aha, I'm ahead 14-7. Not to be outdone, the wife rips out another one and says, "Touchdown, tie score." 5 seconds go by and she lets out a little squeaker. Says, "Field goal, I'm 17-14. Now the pressure's on for the old man. Since the feat is totally unacceptable, he gives it everything he's got and accidentally puts the bed. The wife says, "What the heck was that?" The old man says, "Halftime, switch eyes." I spent a long time contemplating what I would speak about today. Background topics I thought you might be interested in, and it got me wondering how in the world I landed in a job where I had to teach adults what to do when somebody farts on their table. Once I refocused, I decided to look backwards and deconstruct the pathway that brought me here today. It's actually the model I use to develop curriculum, beginning with the end objective and then breaking it down into smaller pieces that will become the building blocks I need to develop learning pathways for my students. The more I thought about the 20-plus years I've been a full-time massage instructor, the clearer it became that I've been incorporating lessons I've learned my entire life into both the classroom and my curriculum designs. The entire process started when my wife Judy put me on that path. I was perfectly happy lying around on the couch watching television while she was supporting me. But for some unknown reason, she just didn't see it the same way. What she didn't realize was that I was simply exploring my own unique learning style, television, the original form of online learning. I find it interesting how certain things, even things you see on television, can just get stuck in your head. I can clearly remember a commercial I saw when I was in 2nd grade that included this image of a young woman in a flowing blue dress running down the beach. I vividly remember that the dress was blue because my parents had just bought something called a color television. And I also remember her running on the beach because I was sure she was going to a picnic. But the commercial always ended before she got there. Now the reason I thought she was going to a picnic also posed a problem I couldn't resolve, and it literally drove me crazy. You see, this was a commercial for feminine napkins. At that age, my only frame of reference for napkins on the beach was a picnic. When I got a little older, I learned those weren't the same kind of napkins. And after getting married, I learned there was no picnic on the beach. Quote Robin Williams, "It's more like an intense negotiation." I thought I would share that story because there's a valuable lesson to be learned here. Clearly, you don't need to be the sharpest tack in the box to win an award, just curious and persistent. Now, it was during one of those intense negotiating sessions that my wife told me to get my butt off the couch and do something. Well, I wasn't about to be bullied into dropping my online studies right then, especially since I knew I had another 28 days to come up with a clever response. But in the interim, I ended up having a major paradigm shift. One day I was sitting at the table in our little apartment and I heard some noise just down the hall in the kitchen. When I peeked around the corner, I saw nothing but a diaper and 2 little naked legs dangling out the open dishwasher, with my 15-month-old son Jesse straining to spin the water agitator inside the machine. When I realized he was mumbling, "Big money, big money." I knew it was time to turn off the television. Heed her advice and enroll in a massage school. People often talk about being called to the massage profession. Apparently my call came from Pat Sajak. Well, as it turns out, Pat Sajak is right. I didn't do any research into the profession. I just enrolled in the school next door to the hospital where my wife works, and accidentally ended up with one of the best entry-level massage educations ever. I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time with the right people. Some of those people who mentored me early on were so clearly gifted that I chose to follow, and as it turns out, I continue to learn from them 22 years later. Our routine conversations have produced some of the most powerful lessons I've ever learned, even quotes that I use in the classroom to this day. Once again, I learned some of my greatest lessons by simply being an attentive listener. If Industry pioneer Benny Vaughn, my sports massage instructor, introduced me to orthopedic physical assessment. My clinical massage instructor was another guy you may have heard of, Whitney Lowe. And my AMTA teacher, Lori Craig, is now the recipient of 2 National Teacher of the Year awards, and she's currently my business partner at Georgia Massage School. Whitney described Lori best when he said, "She is without a doubt the most effective and extraordinary teacher I've had in my entire experience as a student from all elementary school all the way through graduate school." I don't have to quote Lori because my students have the privilege of hearing directly from her in class every day. Plus, I can clearly hear her through the wall. She's pretty loud. Right? I can tell you firsthand that there's no substitute for a well-designed and delivered entry-level education. It's the foundation for one's entire career, and you simply can't build anything on a weak foundation. Benny said something over 20 years ago that propelled me further down the path towards this award. When I heard him say, "The student's perception is the teacher's reality," a light went on in my head. I've had over 150 massage instructors on my staff over the last 22 years, and I've heard more complaints about student attention, behavior, and performance in class than I can count. But I rarely heard an instructor say, "I should have done a better job teaching that class, engaging those students." Benny made me realize that I had to look inside myself to find better, more creative ways to enhance student understanding and retention, to teach my students how to think for themselves, to encourage them not to meet some arbitrary group standard, but to be the best they could possibly be individually, and to inspire them, to free them from the antiquated educational standards we've grown accustomed to so they can once again enjoy the process of learning. It was obvious that student perception of me changed dramatically when I assumed more responsibility for their education. Then Whitney gave me the 2 words I needed to provide students with the foundation necessary for developing critical thinking skills. It depends. 2 simple words which reflect the fact that we often don't have enough information to make good decisions when assessing or treatment planning. It depends made me stop seeing answers to questions as right or wrong and start looking at them as the culmination of a thought process. This was another paradigm shift that forced me to listen to my students even more intently so I could determine where and when their thinking left the path that would have led them to the correct answer. My perception of the students changed dramatically when I started focusing on their thought process instead of just their answers. I've quoted Whitney so many times over the years that one class actually bought me a package of Depend adult diapers for Valentine's. Now that I'm in my 50s, I kind of wish I kept them. Many people were getting the exact same education from the exact same instructors that I did back then. Some of us chose to listen, but many others didn't. I'm glad that my decision was to listen intently, because now that I can stand here and reflect over the past 22 years, it's obvious to me that our decisions determine our destiny. One of those decisions I recently made was to accept an invitation to join the entry-level analysis work group. And once again, I ended up in the right place at the right time with the right people. We hear the term gift utilized in our profession on a regular basis, and in this instance, it truly applies. The ELAP is a gift to the profession given to us all by our leadership organizations. Once this report is finalized and published in December, it will be an open source document on the internet, free to anyone in the profession who wishes to use it as they see fit. This state-of-the-art learning taxonomy is based on modern educational design, and I encourage you all to look it over. You can use this to rebuild an entire program, to rework 1 or 2 courses within an existing program you'd like to improve, or to simply pick up some tips for learning objectives you could add to a class, and you can use it with any textbook you choose. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to every one of you who participated in the lengthy survey process. The work group knew it was going to be a major commitment on your part, but we needed your help. For all of you who chose to participate, I want you to know that I'm truly grateful. A smart man surrounds himself with smarter people, as another familiar quote that had produced a major paradigm shift in my thinking many years ago. I can't begin to tell you how much I learned by simply listening to the brilliant members of the ELAP work group this past year and a half. It was an honor just to be part of the process. Seek out those brilliant people who have walked the path that lies before you and listen intently. But at the same time, don't underestimate your own life experiences. You never know where or when you'll absorb a lesson you might just need later on in life. And here's a good example. I can still remember a yellow line painted on the blacktop separating the boys from the girls during recess when I was in grammar school, 45 years ago. My friends Mike, Steve, Jack, and I snuck up to that line every day and bravely put our toe across the line before we ran away and promptly gave ourselves a cootie shot. The system was foolproof, or so we thought. Things started to fall apart in the 5th grade when Jack's best friend and next-door neighbor John transferred into our school. John stepped across the yellow line right along with the rest of us, but he refused to take the shots. Apparently one of those new age 5th graders who didn't believe in the traditional allopathic cootie shot. To this day, Jack the Cheater, Mike Beatrice, Steve Condoracci, and myself all continue to be protected by the antibodies we developed from those shots. Fortunately, John wasn't so lucky. Women still chase him around, throw their underwear at him, and try to rip John Bon Jovi's clothes off whenever they see him. He's obviously infected with a chronic case of the cooties. I told him to take the shots. We'll need to fast forward back to present day to grasp this particular lesson. I recently had a class full of students who lacked self-confidence. Good grades, fantastic technique, no confidence, and it was holding them back dramatically. On one particularly emotionally gloomy day, I instinctively reached into my pocket and pulled out the cootie shot. I poked one of them in the arm and said, "I've just given you a transfusion of B positive blood. So from this point forward, you need to be positive." Then I gave another and another and another. And before I knew it, I had symbolically vaccinated the entire class. And anytime negativity snuck back into the classroom, all I had to do was pull out the shot. It got to the point where they were not only self-administering these shots, they even turned it back on me a couple times. A simple gesture that a group of young kids screwed around with over 40 years ago became my greatest teaching tool with that particular class. Now today I live and work in Metro Atlanta, hometown of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., author of I Have a Dream, quite possibly one of the greatest speeches ever given. Well, I have a dream too. Not nearly as profound and not clearly as important, just a dream that every massage student who graduates from every school across this country can get the same foundation that I received from those brilliant instructors over 20 years ago. Martin Luther King was a great man, but he couldn't change the world all by himself. What he did to create change was lead a revolution by inspiring the masses to come together and peacefully march in the same direction with a common message. We in the massage community have an opportunity to follow that model right now, to come together and peacefully march in the same direction with a common message. If our organizations and schools and instructors can't find that common message, well then I worry that another quote I heard from Benny Baum, spoken to him by a university president some 30 years ago, might just prove prophetic. Our profession will be dying of terminal uniqueness. We're a diverse group of people who all work for profit, and profit breeds competition. But as we learned earlier, if we compete too hard, we may just poop the bed. Instead of switching sides, I say we just find that common ground and all work together at changing the sheets. Now, that shouldn't be too difficult. Who changes sheets more than a massage therapist? Thank you, AMTA. Thank you, AMTA. Thank you, Custom Craftworks. And most of all, I thank you all for sharing your passion for massage therapy with your students and clients every single day. I wish you all the best and hope that you enjoy the rest of this fabulous convention.